Some of you are most likely confused why I am reviewing a Christmas movie in February. Well, I'll explain. You see, the BG channel and I have agreed to this idea I had in our Discord chat. I find the worst movies possible and post them onto Discord for me and DBG to watch at the same time. So, I did that, and boy, what we just saw really angered us. This was one I wanted to watch now though, because when I found this film, I wanted to get it out of my system before I had to wait another December to get it on. I didn't think it would come now, but, viewers, Christmas is here again. That's the name of the film I'm reviewing. Most of you have probably not heard of this movie. Well, I'm not surprised. It only got a direct-to-video release, but it did have a reasonably prominent cast, featuring Ed Asner and Jay Leno. There's not really much to say about this feature on first glance, because it just looks like your typical Christmas film given a direct-to-video release. I have seen quite a few reviewers slam this movie, so when I first looked at the movie and saw the reviews, I had a feeling it would suck hard. So, me and DBG watched this movie, and we hated it. The question is, how bad could Christmas Is Here Again possibly be? Let's see. Okay, so the plot goes as follows. The film follows a young orphan named Sophiana, who goes out on a journey with an elf named Paul Rocco, a reindeer named Dart, a fox named Buster and a polar bear named Charlie to retrieve Santa's sack that was stolen 30 years ago by some kind of deformed-looking villain named Crad, which is the backwards spelling of dark. Seems very interesting, doesn't it? Well, nope. If you want an adventure, then don't bother looking at this movie, because this adventure the movie gave us didn't even come close to one. The biggest problem with the story is not only that it is predictable from top to bottom and filled with almost every cliché in the book, but it also feels empty. Nothing ever happens that can excite or even change the emotion of the viewers to anything other than anger or boredom. The filmmakers clearly didn't know how to make a grand adventure, so why did they even bother with this? This is not the story's only problem though. I have a lot more to discuss. There are times when the movie tries to be funny, but pretty much all of the jokes fall very flat, and it doesn't help that the movie spews out a lot of them. And yes, the list of jokes here does include a few burp and fart jokes. But, again, that's not all. What the movie did with its lead protagonist, Sophiana, is really infuriating. The movie tries ever so desperately hard to give Sophiana a really sad backstory just to get the tear out of the audience, so much so that it just becomes obnoxious and overall pretty cliched. It's like the filmmakers were like, come on, she's an orphan, she's getting picked on, she even needs a cane to walk. Darn you viewers, cry. It just truly angers me to see so many failed desperate attempts from this movie. While we're on the subject of that, let me get back into the story a bit more. Occasionally, the movie would bring in some new ideas to the table that some Christmas movies haven't done, like explain what Santa's sack is made of and such. I would have admired the filmmakers for that, if they had just put more development in them and did not have the movie just forget about them entirely. Like, they say that, and then afterwards, no mentioning of it anymore in the future. Also, this is probably the first film I have ever seen in my life that feels rushed, and yet painfully slow at the same time. Seriously, the ending of this film goes on forever. And it doesn't help that it's a cliché fest to begin with. Then again, that's what this film practically is. And not even 5 minutes into the feature, the major problem in the movie's plot comes in. I'll get back to that later when I discuss the musical numbers, because that's not the only place where the movie feels either too fast or slow. Pacing is not a thing in this movie, like, at all. Very little goes on, and very little, if not, nothing, works here. So why did the filmmakers even bother trying to craft a so-called story? I'm giving the story a 0 out of 10. So, we don't have a story that even comes close to a good one, but what about the animation? Oh wait, it's a direct-to-video movie, it's probably going to present some really low-quality animation. Well, yes, and no. The animation here's a bit of a mixed bag. Let me explain why. I will give it this. I do quite like the animation style that this movie presents. The backgrounds remind me of one of those old retro cartoons from like the 1960s or 50s. They do look well drawn. The same can be said for the characters as well. I do like the style they're given to, with some nice sharp edges and clean looking curves in their designs. I can at least say that this movie is not a complete eyesore, in fact, not even close to one. However, the character animation and effects leave a lot to be desired. I'm not saying that the animators did a bad job, they didn't have a huge budget to work with, I can be sure of that, but that's the problem with the character animation and effects. They look cheap. The characters have really stiff movements most of the time, and when musical sequences happen, the visuals going on in the sequences just aren't that impressive looking. There honestly isn't that much to say about the animation either, because other than some stylish backgrounds and character designs, it doesn't offer much. Oh, yeah, if you have a keen eye, you may see a couple of cost-cutting bits of animation, like how toys would just pop up in the scene instead of coming out of machines, like they should and how they were depicted in the shot, and how a conveyor belt is animated. You can see the lines on the belt moving out and in from each other, and some don't even move at all. I mean, I wouldn't be complaining that much if this was released as a television movie. The quality seems to fall into the levels of one of those movies. So yeah, the animation does not hide its cheap budget a lot of the time, but it did present us with something nice stylistically. I'll give the animation a 5 out of 10. The mediocre animation, honestly, was actually the best part of the movie in my opinion. You are not going to be seeing a happy Jackster for the rest of this review now, because I have some really bad characters and songs to discuss about. Oh boy, where do I even begin with these characters? They are so one-dimensional, so unfunny, so uninteresting, and there certainly wasn't a ton of character development that seemed convincing here. You've got Sophiana, who is the orphan stuck in an orphanage, worrying about the kids around her suffering, and all she wants of course is a family. What makes her especially aggravating is that the movie portrays her as this innocent little Miss Perfect who doesn't deserve her treatment. Like I mentioned before, it's such a desperate attempt to get the tear out of the audience, therefore it all becomes obnoxious and cliched. It's also formulaic, isn't it? Paul Rocco is one of Santa's elves, and he just supplied a few of the film's jokes. I honestly found him to be the most unlikable character in the movie. He's so unfunny, he's obnoxious, he's uninteresting, he's just overall a really bad character. As for Dart, he's just a bland character who has a dream and eventually gets it in the end because, yeah, you know how predictable this movie is. Buster is another example of a one-dimensional character, you know. He leads the others into trouble, then has a change of heart and becomes good towards them. Nothing new. He also tries desperately hard to be funny, but fails miserably. Not much more can be said about him. Charlie is a dumb polar bear, and is a friend of Buster. Once again, this is another character that tries desperately to be funny. But, like everyone else who tried, they failed miserably. There really isn't much to say about these awful characters, because they offer so little. I'd also like to say that Craig is a terrible villain. He has such a simple motive, and his explanation for stealing Santa's sack is just because he is evil. Like, we know that he stole it because Santa stopped handing out his coal to naughty children, which, like I said before, could have been a decent idea if they had put more development into it. We know why he did it, but the movie couldn't be bothered to present an actually interesting backstory for him. Instead, they decided to be lazy and put in, he tried to be nice, but he couldn't, so he was just evil. In order to make a villain interesting and have a believable motive, you have to develop them really well, instead of just saying that he is evil. This is not filmmaking. And besides, after he steals the sack, all he does is just make kinds of physical contact with his servants, who are mutated children, while watching them mine coal. His defeat is also the lamest I've seen in any film ever. As for Santa Claus and Miss Claus, they feel generally useless until the end of the film when they are used for a certain cliché. They aren't anything special, they are just there. Because yeah, Christmas movie, yep. And Miss Dowdy, the woman in charge of the orphanage, is just the typical woman in charge of the orphanage, and of course is nice to the main protagonist in the end because feels and clichés. Oh and, Remember when I said that this movie features the voice of Jay Leno? Well, he's actually the narrator of this movie. And he never shuts up while he's narrating. I don't really hate Jay Leno, I bet he is a nice guy in real life, but we get what's going on. We don't need narration for nearly everything. I don't even think the OK voice acting can make up for such a mess of characters we were given. I really want to forget these worthless characters. They have nothing unique to them, they aren't likable, and the movie doesn't handle them the way it should do. I'm giving the characters a 0 out of 10. My complaints still haven't finished yet, but I am close. We now move on to the so-called musical numbers. Yes, this is a musical, and it has quite a large amount of musical numbers given its running time. I counted 10 in the songs section in the credits, so that would be on average, 1 song per 7.3 minutes for this movie, as the movie's running time is 73 minutes. So, are the songs a joy to hear? Nope. They are the exact opposite. They are just, dreadful to say the least. The songs consist of Who Stole Santa's Sack? Which, fun fact, was actually the movie's working title, I Stole Santa's Sack. Will I Ever See? The Unchristmas Song, Easy to Dream, I'm Evil, Storytelling Song, Christmas Is Here Again, All Because of Me, and You've Got Me, Honey. All of them are an absolute insult to the ears. The lyrics are not very innovative, the tunes are very forgettable, and the vocal performances are terrible. It also doesn't help that some of these songs just recap over what just happened in the plot moments ago, so it seems pointless to even add those ones in. The songs also drag on a lot of the time, so much so that me and DBG were begging for the characters to stop singing, which they never do in any of the songs. The song I particularly hated the most was I'm Evil, the villain song. It doesn't give a villain development that even comes close to interesting, and it tries hard to be funny, where Kratz says instead of being good, he'd rather hula dance or square dance. Those parts just feel out of place and rather awkward. The songs themselves also come out of nowhere most of the time. It's definitely going to be torture having at least 1 song per 7.3 minutes on average, because minutes ago you would be begging for the characters to stop singing, then a few more minutes later, you're back to your screams of agony. Just like the story itself, no effort was put into any of these musical numbers whatsoever. They are just a horrible waste of time, and I am giving these musical numbers a 0 out of 10. Wow, just wow. And I thought the Christmas Chronicles was awful. I'd take that in a heartbeat over this movie. Christmas Is Here Again is not only a god-awful Christmas film, but I'm willing to call it one of the worst animated movies I've seen in my life. With a paper-thin, dull, predictable story with its pacing all over the place, mostly mediocre animation, characters that infuriate rather than please, terrible humor, bad character handling, annoying narration by Jay Leno, barely any interesting character development, and horrible songs that drag on for way too long. Maybe the voice acting is okay and the style of the feature is nice, but they don't come close to saving this abomination. I can only really recommend this movie to the youngest of viewers. They should enjoy the songs, the juvenile humor, and I doubt they'd be bothered about anything I was bothered with. Otherwise, just avoid this movie at all costs unless you don't believe what I'm saying. The full movie is actually available to watch for free on YouTube, in good quality. Click on the card on the top right-hand corner of the screen to see the movie. A link to the movie is also available in the description below. I'm glad I got this out of my system quickly, because having only just discovered this movie, I didn't want to have to wait another Christmas to review it, especially how I had already forgotten to review another bad Christmas movie last December. We're most definitely excited for Christmas to come again, but this movie isn't allowed to join it. Christmas Is Here Again has gained just 5 points out of a possible 40, which translates to an overall score of just a 1 out of 10. Well, that was a stinker of a movie. But DBG actually thought that this movie was worse than Food Fight. I mean, yes, this movie is awful, but honestly, I wouldn't stretch that far and say that it's worse than Food Fight. At least this movie isn't a complete eyesore. Also, I've delayed production on both the Lizzie Movie Director's Cut and Lizzie 3, because I'm working on a brand new original movie. I will post more details on it sometime in the future. For now though, I will work on that and put the 2 previously mentioned movies on hiatus. Once again, don't expect a lot of uploads from me, because other than some movies, I haven't got tons of ideas in me. Thanks for watching this movie review. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, and if you are new to my channel and you enjoy my content, consider subscribing and hitting the bell to be notified of any future content I post. I'd also like to thank DBG channel for enduring through this awful movie with me. He will also do a review of this movie on his channel. Be sure to check it out when it is uploaded. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Subscribe by clicking on my profile picture that has just popped up, and click on this profile picture that has just popped up to subscribe to my amazing friend, DBG channel. And click on these 2 squares that have popped up to check out my latest video and a random video for a bit of variety. See you in the next video.